it is hot in there, which is kind of the point. It's August in Phoenix, Arizona, and the roof of the vehicle gets hot. It's actually cooled down a bit because it's after 7 o'clock tonight, and the sun's, you know, done what the sun does every night for some reason. But let's see what this looks like anyways. Got one of these cheapo Harbor Freight, whatever things. Oh, that's not bad at all. That's 104.6. Probably because this is take number 9 and I've had the sunroof open and shut a whole bunch of times. But you get the idea. It gets hot up here. I don't need to tell you that. So the idea is that, you know, what happens to most greases when they get hot, they melt, they start running. Well, you want them to stay put, right? You don't want them to leave where they're supposed to be doing their job of lubricating. That's part of how these things get old, crusty, stop working. So I'm gonna go ahead and just show you the areas on here where you'll probably want to be lubricating. This is a Mitsubishi Montero, but this kind of goes for, you know, like every vehicle basically. You're gonna wanna get some sunroof lubricant, something that's actually, you know, correct for this type of application. I'm using Ultimox 226. This is a generic version of Krytox, which is also packaged by Mercedes-Benz as Glite paste for their sunroofs. I don't know what the Volkswagen material is. It's a lot cheaper. I haven't bought any of that to find out. It's an order of magnitude cheaper. And maybe it's good, maybe it's not. This stuff's not too bad. This will run you about 30 bucks. And it's good for refurbing probably 2 really neglected ones, or keeping one that's not neglected going for a long time. So the places that you're going to want to try and get it are not just everywhere up here. These tracks, they don't need to just be caked up with, you know, all the grease. Inside this thing here, I'll use this little pointy guy. There's a kind of a rope cable thing that has little gear teeth all along it. And this is what pulls and pushes the sunroof. When the sunroof's going forward and backward, there's a motor up here that pulls these cables past each other and pushes them past each other. And that's what moves the sunroof forward and backward. These little cables here are in these channels. So you'll want to get in here. You also want to get around the underside here. That's where the little slides are kind of moving along. That's what holds the weight of the sunroof in place. Both the bottom and the top. So you want to try and kind of get in there. I find that if I just take a Q-tip, bend the end of it a little bit, dab a little, you know, grease on and rub that along there, that's a real easy way to get into it, and then you just throw the Q-tip away. Similarly, on the inside edge of the rail, there's also a rub, and also here, these guys here, these are what push your little wind buffeting guard down. So you'll want to grease up the top of these guys here as well. And that's pretty much all there is to greasing it. Now, if yours has been neglected, if you've been driving around in dusty conditions with the sunroof open, so all sorts of dust can get in here, you might have to take the whole thing out and clean it deeply if you want it to work correctly. That's a lot of work. I don't drive around off-road with the sunroof open, kind of for that reason. I don't like having dust everywhere in the works that are mechanical as well as in my upholstery. So if I'm off-road, I'm usually windows up, windows partially up, sunroof shut, keep the sun off me anyways. So enough about four-wheeling. You're not watching for this. Let's go ahead and do some science. So here's the setup. Got a torch, got a thermometer, got Shin-Etsu grease. This is a common silicone grease used for all sorts of stuff. It's amazing for everything except sunroofs. Got Ultimox 226, got Glite paste, I got axle grease, and I've got this piece of galvanized steel right here that has a bunch of dots, circles, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of the President's condoms, and I'm going to go ahead and put them on my fingers and use them to smear a little bit of each of these products into these holes. And we're going to measure the temperature. And then I'm going to take the torch and I'm going to heat it from the back and see if we can make those things run and at what temperature they run. This is not scientific at all. If you're expecting high-class measurement and scientific rigor, you are looking in the wrong place. I apologize for that. Just trying to illustrate something very, very simply here. I additionally, of course, have this boy around, and I'm wearing some goggles. I don't know what kind of mayhem is going to take place, but I don't want to be completely foolish, so let's see what happens. Looks like we're measuring about 107 degrees in freedom units. I don't know if you can see that or not, but give or take 105, 107 freedom units. Looks like that's about 40 in Celsius. All right, well that was entirely unscientific, but it looked like it took somewhere between 190 and 200 degrees for any and all of them to be running. Now obviously the temperature of this was not heated evenly, and additionally I was not able to measure evenly on all of it because I just have this and was just kind of pointing it around, and well, frankly this came from Harbor Freight. But hopefully this at least illustrated a little bit about how they melt and what they do once they've melted. This is really hot and hurts a lot on my finger. I'm going to wipe it off now. All right, so what, if anything, can we say that we've learned from any of this? Since, I don't have the tools or the time really to put together a rigorous scientific explanation, maybe someone who's like a full-time YouTuber who actually gets paid for this, maybe one of you guys can pick up the mantle and, try to do a better job than I've done. I admit I haven't done a very great job here. But one thing that I learned from this was it was very early that the axle grease started moving. I feel like it didn't take as much heat. And when I was looking at the residual temperatures with the temperature gun, this wasn't the one that seemed like it got the most heat. In fact, the Shinetsu was the one that looked like it had the highest residual temperature. And that might have been because it was closer to the center of the board. The edges probably cool off faster. I don't know, just kind of guessing. Something else I noticed that's interesting is that Ultimox is marketed by their manufacturer as being interchangeable in every way with Krytox. This is Ultimox 226, and I think they mention it's interchangeable with Krytox 205 or 206. Glite paste, I'm led to understand at least by Googling the crap out of it, the glite paste is also Krytox 205, but they don't look the same. You can see that here. This is the Ultimox over here. That's kind of a white color, like an opaque white, whereas the glite paste is kind of a more, petroleum jelly kind of appearance. I've never handled actual Krytox brand Krytox before. I know they make like a lightweight one that a lot of the gun people and the Rubik's Cube people are really all about for making everything work as fast as it possibly can. But of course we're talking sunroofs here, a little different, a little the same. I've been using the Ultimox. The first time that I rebuilt my sunroof mechanism, took it apart and cleaned it and everything, I had some glite paste that I had gotten, actual Mercedes, the big giant thing that had been given to me by a friend. And so I used that when I was doing the first cleaning. But then subsequently, because glite paste is generally pretty expensive, I picked up this Ultimox because, it says it's the same thing and it costs a whole lot less. So now seeing the two side by side, I went and bought this just for this video. Now seeing the two side by side, they're really not the same. They don't have the same melting properties. They don't look the same. They both claim to be a perfluorinated ether or whatever, a paste form of PTFE basically. But they don't behave the same at all in this case. Now afterwards, it's It's still slippery. It hasn't become crusty just from being heated up to 200 something degrees, just like the Glite Paste, but they still don't really seem the same, and I think I might go to Glite Paste in the future. I think that it took longer for it to melt, and it also seems like it's kind of still slipperier. They're pretty close to the same, and this isn't scientific. I've got just 2 little finger cots on my fingers, but I think the Glite Paste seems like it's a little bit slicker, and that's what you want, and it also seems to stick a little better, which is what you want. The Shin-Etsu is excellent stuff for like inside the car, when you put together the dash after putting in a radio and you don't want the dash to click and squeak, and if you've got like a door panel that squeaks and you've got weird little clicky squeaky noises inside the car, Shin-Etsu is the stuff. This is the good stuff for that. But I don't think that I would use it or other silicone-based lubricants for the sunroof, because it did want to kind of slide down a bit, and also, as my understanding is, that this stuff, once it kind of gets burnt, it gets kind of crusty. So I don't know what it takes to burn it, but you know, it probably takes not that much. Axle grease belongs in the axle. You saw that just started slipping just right away. So I don't think that's the appropriate stuff to use on a sunroof, and if that's what you have used in the past as a petroleum-based grease, you might have to do a bit of kind of cleaning and flushing to get that out of there and then put a PTFE-based grease in there. Now the other side of this is the freezing side, the putting it in the freezer and seeing what it does, or living in Wisconsin during the winter or something of that nature. I don't have really the resources to try and do that. Yeah, I own a freezer and I could stick it on a paper plate, but it wouldn't be much of a better test than this. And it's not something that I encounter in Phoenix. You know, we don't have freezing temperatures around here. So I don't know that I can comment too well on that. The Glite Paste and the Ultimox are supposed to be thermally stable down to something like negative 300 degrees or some insane number like that. So I would assume that that means that it remains sort of slippery and doesn't, you know, chunk up into, almost like a taffy, like, you know, some lubricants do when they get super cold. This stuff won't become that type of gummy whatever stuff, supposedly. Shin-Etsu, my understanding is that it does not either. So I don't know if that's true or not. Again, don't live in that area. But you know, those are kind of where I've got on that. But hopefully this has been, you know, informative to you. And if you'd like to purchase any of the things, I've got some Amazon links down there. This is my first time actually doing the thing where I put the links in. I'm not really, you know, a salesperson. So, you know, if you happen to want to purchase any of this stuff here, I do endorse the Glite Paste. This stuff is good stuff, and it's literally made for this purpose, or at least packaged for this purpose by Mercedes. Shin-Etsu I use in all of my vehicles for any time I've got a squeak or a click or some other noise that is just driving me batty inside. I can drive down the road on a bumpy road and not have that clickety squeakety stuff that happens in older cars. So that's really good stuff. I've been using this and I have no complaints about it, but after this test, I'm gonna go to the Glite Paste. Axle grease, axles, that's where it goes. That's about it.